No, it's okay. Just go ahead and take the quiz anyway, and then you can watch it and be ready for next time. Okay, the quiz today isn't even worth a grade. Don't worry about it. Backstreet Boys coming in handy. Hey guys, Mr. Shaw back again. We're going to be talking about the Korean War now, which is going to be, again, another big event in the Cold War. This is going to go on from about 1950 to 1953. Again, we have the leaders of the respective North and South Korea, Kim Il-sung and then Syngman Rhee. And these two guys are going to be very vital to the war, especially Kim Il-sung, who is going to, again, that is actually the descendant of the current leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, which again we'll get to a little bit later in our story. Well, not in this story, but soon enough in the story. All right, so this is the domino theory at its finest. Okay, let's see. So, in the Korean War, in Korea, what you need to know is that it was split temporarily after World War II into the Communist North, which was controlled by the Soviet Union, and the Democratic South, which was controlled by the United States. They decided to split it at the 38th parallel. Now, this was decided kind of by the Soviet Union and by the United States. So when basically what happened was, in 1950, the North attacked the South specifically because they wanted to unite the nation under communism. Okay, so Kim Il Sung, when he wanted to be in control of an entire Korea that was united. That's ironic that he decided to attack in 1950 because there were U.S. troops in South Korea that had literally just left because the United States was trying to demilitarize a lot of the areas that they had militarized during World War II, and that was, again, one of the first places that they did that. So they had just left, so the North attacked the South, and then Truman decided to send General MacArthur in order to aid South Korea, and then to also restore the previous border at the 38th parallel. And again, General MacArthur was the very famous general from World War II, who was successful in eventually defeating Japan in 1945. And here he is, right there. So basically what happened was MacArthur quickly is able to push back the North Koreans to the Chinese border. Again, if you see, if you look at a map, he's kind of able to, he's able to restore the original border, the 38th parallel. He's actually able to kind of push them past North Korea into China. And the Chinese is after that, again, they are a communist nation now, so they are going to assist North Korea against the United States and South Korea. So the Chinese are going to help push the United States back to the 38th parallel as the Korean border. So nothing's changed. Okay, so basically the MacArthur pushes like the North Koreans all the way to the Chinese border. The Chinese and the North Koreans push him all the way back to the 38th parallel. And MacArthur wanted to actually attack China during this time because they were a newly founded country. There's a lot of stuff going on in China. They were killing a lot of people, and they called it a cultural revolution. And so MacArthur realized that they were going to be a little bit weaker if they attacked China directly, but Truman didn't want that. Okay, he wanted to attack China. Truman didn't want that, so he did not allow that to happen. There was a ceasefire after they are kind of like just at a standoff. Like, here's the 38th parallel, and then there were just troops on both sides. So they had a ceasefire, meaning again not an end to the war, but just a temporary stop in the war. And MacArthur refused to obey it. Okay, he demanded unconditional surrender by the Chinese, and since he was disobeying the president actually fired this very famous general from World War II. And again, that's significant because MacArthur was really good at his job, but Truman didn't want to have an insubordinate general in such an important time, so he ended up firing him. So what you need to know about the Korean War is that, again, you can kind of see here's the map that I was talking about earlier. So here is again North Korea. So MacArthur was able to push them all the way back into China, this is the Manchurian region, and then the Chinese offensive pushed them back. And here's the 38th parallel. So anyway, during the Korean War, again, it was only about 3 years long. About 6 million soldiers and civilians died, which is a lot in only 3 years, and especially for such a small country too. So and put a star by the second bullet here. Basically, what you need to know is that both sides, the United States and the North Koreans and the communists, were willing to sacrifice troops for very small gains, and that is basically why there were so many deaths. And in this, what's interesting too is that this happened right after, only 5 years after World War II. So you would think that people would be, kind of, uncomfortable about going into major conflicts again, but clearly not. And there was a lot of people that lost their lives in those 3 years because of it. It did end as a stalemate in 1953. Korea still remains split today at the 38th parallel. Again, in North Korea, it is still ruled by a communist dictator, Kim Jong-un, and then in South Korea is still friendly to the United States, and they are a democracy. All right, so we're going to kind of switch gears here again. I'm fast forwarding a little bit to the 60s. Basically, and I'm not exactly sure on the exact year, but Joseph Stalin died. Again, obviously he couldn't live forever. He had been the leader of the country since 1920, like early 1920s. Anyway, I looked it up because it was going to annoy me. Stalin died in 1953, so Nikita Khrushchev takes over after Stalin dies, and Stalin was a really bad dude. Like, he was killing his enemies. He sent anybody who disagreed with him, to Siberian work camps. We're talking about a guy who literally killed millions of people. And it is, so when Khrushchev takes over, there's a lot of people that are excited. They think that, hey, maybe things won't be so bad. Maybe, this guy will actually try to help us out. He'll try to make Russia better. He'll try to, improve the things that Stalin kind of ignored. And unfortunately, Khrushchev, he did do a few of those things, but he was kind of very similar to Stalin in that respect, that he still was a totalitarian dictator, and he did not, he wasn't quite as big of a change as people wanted. Anyway, and after Eisenhower, he is president for 8 years. Again, I know we haven't talked about him a whole lot. We mentioned the Eisenhower Doctrine. We'll get to a few other things that he did a little bit later. But John F. Kennedy takes over. He is the youngest president ever elected, so this is very important because people are hoping that now that we have these two new leaders, we are finally going to be able to bring an end to some of the tension. Okay, like that's really all the Cold War is people are nervous, people are tense, they don't know what's going to happen, and they're hoping that these two new leaders are going to be able to fix that. Khrushchev thinks, although he thinks that JFK is young and inexperienced and would be very easily pushed around, and that's not really the case. Again, we'll talk about it. I'll talk a little bit about what happens under these two leaders. And here you see the picture is them meeting to discuss nuclear proliferation, which means like the expansion of nuclear weapons and who has nuclear weapons, and they're trying to stop nuclear proliferation. All right, so this leads us to the Berlin crisis. Now, guys, talking about Berlin is a very interesting case because West Berlin was like I said, it was capitalist, it was a democracy, and it was flourishing. There were people, it was very wealthy. There were a bunch of people that, people were doing very well in West Berlin. And by contrast, in East Berlin, people were starving. There were people that, the government was controlling everything about the economy, and they weren't doing a good job of it. So there were people in East Berlin that were suffering, that couldn't find jobs, and they were actually some of them were actually fleeing to West Berlin because it was a wealthy capitalist part of the city, and then they could get much better jobs in West Berlin. Now, obviously the communists are not going to like this. Like, people are leaving. They should be, they should be sticking around. They should be trying to, they should be part of the whole communist mentality. So what they did was they started building a wall. They literally did not want people to leave. So they, at 2 a.m. on August 13th, they started building the Berlin Wall. This separated East and West Berlin. And then it was eventually torn down in 1989. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to find the year here. It's like magic. Okay, so it was put up in 1961. You need to add. I just do a parentheses right here and add that to this second bullet. Okay, and this information brought to you by the iPhone 6s Plus. Okay, hey, if you want to be like everybody else, get an iPhone. Anyway, moving on. So here, oh hey, and see, I had the year in there, and I should trust myself. That's unbelievable. Okay, anyway, so the Berlin Wall goes up again, 1961, and again, you see here the two sides. So you would literally have people, again, this is just a kind of a smaller portion of the wall. We'll talk more about this in class because this is a very, very interesting part of history. But anyway, you could literally see, like, people would be able to see across the wall. There would be a lot of people who would try to cross it in the dead of night. Some people even try to dig tunnels underneath, all kinds of crazy stuff. And this is a picture of Checkpoint Charlie, which was an Allied checkpoint. And it was one of the only ways to get from East to West Berlin, which was very famously in the movie Bridge of Spies. All right. Then also another very, very famous part of this is Kennedy gives a speech in Berlin in 1963 after the Berlin Wall has already gone up. And he says, again, you'll have to excuse my terrible German. He says, "Ich bin ein Berliner." Okay, and this literally means I am a Berliner. There's a really famous, like a urban legend that this phrase actually means something like "I am a donut." That's not true, but there's a lot of people that say that that's what he said in the speech, and he did not. But anyway. So he is telling Berliners that the West is with them, that the United States wants to help. Again, this wall, guys, it separated families. There were people that lived in the East and worked in the West, and they left to go to work, and then they were separated from their families for 30 years. Okay, again, this is really important because it just went up. Like, the communists didn't care. They were just like, all right, this is up now, and you're going to deal with it because we can't have people fleeing, to the West just because things are better over there. This is going to bring us to Castro. Fidel Castro is going to run a successful communist revolution in Cuba. Again, and this is a picture of him and Nikita Khrushchev in 1961, and that is going to be very, very relevant to us because, like I said, I didn't say this, but Cuba is 90 miles off the coast of Florida. So, two major things that happen here. First up is the Bay of Pigs invasion. Too much. All right, so in 1959, Fidel Castro, a guerrilla leader, he drove the repressive American-sponsored dictator named Batista from power. And so then the Cuban communists are going to rise to power under Castro. First of all, the revolution was not really, I called it a communist revolution. That was kind of after the fact. They decided to make it into a communist revolution after the United States didn't support them. After the United States tries to invade, it kind of turns into a communist revolution. But that's not what Fidel Castro had originally had in mind. Anyway, JFK is going to, again, they don't want a communist threat so close to the United States. So what they do is they create this idea called the Bay of Pigs invasion. And this is supposed to be covert military assistance to anti-Castro Cuban exiles to invade Cuba. Basically, so Cubans who had gotten kicked out, who hated Castro, they were going to invade Cuba with the assistance of the United States and try to overthrow Castro. Basically, what happened with the Bay of Pigs invasion, guys, is that the United States was supposed to provide air support. With that air support, they were going, like the Cuban exiles on the ground were going to go out, they were going to take over But the only way that was going to be successful is if the United States actually did support them from the air. Anyway, one really bad thing led to another, and it ended up that the United States did not give them that assistance, that military assistance, or the air support, and the Cuban invaders were absolutely destroyed. Fidel Castro had been, because of again, like I said, just a whole bunch of bad stuff happening. The Fidel Castro knew about it. He sent troops to the Bay of Pigs, and he was able to completely wipe out the Cuban exiles. And this is really embarrassing for John F. Kennedy. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and finish this last thing up, so this video might be a little bit longer. So again, the Bay of Pigs thing, they're trying to invade right here. Again, you see Castro here with some of his military. These were supposed to be the fight, like the Cuban exiles that were basically sponsored by the United States to try to take over Cuba and to get rid of Fidel Castro, and it was absolutely unsuccessful. All right, last thing we're going to do is the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis, basically, there are two major things that happened. First thing, the United States had put missiles in Turkey, okay, which is the former Ottoman Empire, okay, now called Turkey, and this is nearby the Soviet Union. So when the United States did this, the USSR believed that this justified them putting missiles in Cuba. They said, hey, if you're going to have missiles near us, we're going to put missiles near you. Now, we had actually, I guess the United States military had flown over Cuba. They had found some examples of SAM, surface-to-air missiles. And they, again, and I'll show you pictures here in a second, they had found these bases that were, kind of masquerading as like soccer fields and stuff like that. And so there was a really big concern about what the Soviet Union was providing to Cuba. So JFK orders a blockade, okay, which again, he's literally just going to cut off Cuba from the rest of the world, specifically from the Soviet Union. He doesn't want them to be able to bring missiles into Cuba. So he starts the blockade, and the Soviet Union they sent their ships into, they're trying to send their ships to Cuba with missiles and their ships. So there's USSR ships coming. Here's the blockade, okay, and they're facing off. Okay, Khrushchev had said publicly that any attempt to block Soviet ships from Cuba would be an act of war. But again, we don't want them to have these missiles so close to our coast. So on October 24th, 1962, they met. Okay, they were facing off. Have you ever seen the movie X-Men First Class? They do a pretty good job of showing this. I think it's First Class. I'm not really sure. Anyway, and so they face off. We don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows. It's going to this could lead to nuclear war. But then again, on October 24th, the Soviet ships turned around, and as they approached the blockade. And put a star by this last one. Again, it's the closest the world has ever been to nuclear war. Okay, again, so this is the Cuban Missile Crisis is the one time that the actual Cold War almost became a hot war. So this is one of the pictures from a spy plane that we had seen. Again, we had taken a picture of this in San Cristobal, and this again was given to JFK, and that's why he issued the blockade. Famous political cartoon from the time. You see, it says, "We went eyeball to eyeball with the Russians, and the other man blinked." Okay, they both got their fingers near the button. Again, they're sitting on hydrogen bombs. Again, this is definitely the most intense part of the Cold War. And you see here that this is the blockaded area, and then this is the red line back here is the range of missiles that were in Cuba. So you can see it could have hit a number of very large important cities in the United States. Anyway, guys, we're going to stop here. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time.